All right, let's talk about gun control. It is attributed to Vladimir Lenin that he said, one person with a gun can control 100 people without one. All you got to do is look at any concentration camp or prison, and you see this is exactly correct. Picture this scenario. You're in the bank waiting to cash a check or something. A guy walks in with a gun and says, everybody lay on the floor. Well, everybody lays on the floor. He has the gun. Now, picture this scenario. Everybody in the bank has a gun. Everybody's carrying a concealed weapon. They don't want to hurt anybody. They just want to protect themselves just in case, so they're all carrying a concealed weapon, like I do most of the time. Somebody walks into the bank, says, everybody lay on the floor. So 100 people pull out their gun. Sir, you lay on the floor. Right? That's all it takes. Gun control is not about guns, it's about control. Lenin called for disarming the people. Stalin called for gun control. Hitler called for gun control. See, gun control goes back to the basic idea of, I have power over you. I have the gun, you don't. You do what I say. I am in control, which goes back to Satan's basic idea of, hey, ye shall be as gods. And whoever has the power, has the control, they feel like they are God in that situation. And the American government has done a wonderful job of getting bigger and better weapons, and we can certainly control during wartime. We dominate. You guys are in the military, and I think our military system is wonderful. It's great. But what if the wrong people get in charge of it? Then we're going to dominate who? Who gets dominated? You know? Us. Yeah. It's going to be used on us. There's a website about this, members.localnet.com /BobG/IFA6, if you want to get more information on that. Don Boys, a good friend of mine, was a member of Indiana House Representatives, lives in Ringgold, Georgia, near Chattanooga, Tennessee. He travels and speaks on creation, and really, really smart fella. He said, gun control is not about guns, but it's about control. He said, you might be a liberal if you don't trust honest Americans with automatic weapons, but you do trust the federal government with them. He said, you might be a liberal if you think guns are the cause of crime, but you don't think matches are the cause of arson. Think about that. You might be a liberal if you think the death penalty is government-sanctioned killing, but you don't think a prison sentence is government-sanctioned kidnapping. That is a good one. You guys are a thinker. I love the way he thinks, you know. I said, wow, why didn't I think of that, you know? The Second Amendment to the Constitution was very clear. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So if Congress passes a law that bans people from owning machine guns, that law is null and void. It is a violation of the Second Amendment. A law is null and void from the moment it is passed if it violates the Constitution. So you don't have to wait until it's proven unconstitutional. It's unconstitutional right away. You cannot violate the Constitution. So no matter what laws they pass, it doesn't matter because the Constitution takes precedence over all of this. The purpose of the Second Amendment was not so we can go duck hunting. It's so we can protect ourselves from our own government if need be. I heard a lady, I saw the videotape of a lady testifying before Congress. They were debating about gun control. She sat there in front of all these guys, you know, these senators who wanted gun control. And she said, I was in the restaurant in Texas when the man came in shooting people. Was that Luby's restaurant? Yeah. She said, I was in there with my mom and dad. They were having their 40th anniversary. Dad had taken mom out for 40th anniversary dinner. The guy came in, began shooting people, shot my father in the head. He was laying there dying, and my mom was holding him in her hands. And the guy's still going around shooting people. And I said, Mom, he's not looking. Let's get out of here. And we had a chance to escape. So I grabbed Mom, pulled on her, and said, let's go, Mom. And she said, I ran out the door. I turned around and realized Mom hadn't come with me. The gunman went over, shot my mom point blank in the head, and killed her. She said, I'm not mad at the guns. She said, and you guys are debating on gun control. Please do not vote for any gun control. We don't need gun control. We need criminal control. She said, we need guns in America. The purpose of the Second Amendment was so that we can protect ourselves from you guys. And she pointed right to them. I thought, yay, somebody finally figured out why we have the Second Amendment. The purpose of the Second Amendment is the last defense if the government goes bad. The Founding Fathers were sharp. They had just come out under the rule of King George. And the only way to keep government in line is for government to fear the people. See, if the people fear their government, you now have tyranny. If the government fears the people, you can have freedom. The government ought to be afraid to pass laws and afraid to do things that are unconstitutional because there's too many patriots out there that love their country and love their freedom. Many animals that eat grass have big horns. What do you need horns for when you're eating grass? Does that help him eat the grass? No. All he wants to do is eat the grass, right? But the lion keeps jumping on his back. He doesn't have the horns to help him eat the grass. He has the horns to keep the lion off his back so that he can just eat the grass. I don't have, we've always had guns around our house, lots of them, and they're always loaded. I didn't tell my kids, pretend like it's loaded. It was loaded. It is. An unloaded gun is just a club. And when I pick it up, if I got to shoot it, I want to be ready to shoot it. I don't want to say, hold on, sir, I got to find my bullets. You know, like Barney, where's my bullet? Man, they're in it. They're ready to fire. Pick it up, flip the safety off, and hit the trigger. And go, you know. And there's guns everywhere. And my kids have grown up with that, and they've started shooting when they were 3 years old. You know, I wanted them to be good shots. They knew real well, don't touch that gun or Daddy's going to spank you, and you won't forget that one for a long time. I tell you when you can touch the gun, okay? I don't want to shoot anybody. Honestly, I don't. Never have. Hope I never have to. I have guns because there are some people that want to come, you know, hurt my family. I just want to protect my family, that's all. I'm like the bull. I don't want to hurt anybody. I just want to eat the grass, but if you jump on my back, you're going to get it. Period. I think that's the right and godly attitude. As I understand Scripture, there are two kinds of wars, basically. There are wars of aggression, where you're trying to take over somebody else's property. That's wrong. Then there are wars where you just have to defend yourself because somebody else is having a war of aggression against you. Now, if you are the aggressor trying to take somebody else's land, you're wrong. Okay? They ought to shoot you. They have a right to shoot you. It's called self-defense. But if somebody's coming to take away my property or harm my wife or my children, I have a right to defend myself. That's a universal common sense law, the right to self-defense. And that's what guns are about. And gun control is going to be slow, gradual choking down where you no longer have the ability to defend yourself. The Lions held a conference to outlaw horns on animals. They said it was dangerous to allow these untrained animals to have such dangerous weapons. They cited examples where some animals had been accidentally harmed by horns. We need to outlaw horns on the animals. Well, why would the Lions hold a conference like that, do you think? Obviously, they have an ulterior motive, don't they? Remember when the kids got shot in Colorado? Right away, the liberal media jumped on the gun control issue, didn't they? Those kids broke 18 gun laws breaking into that school, or going into that school, shooting everybody. They violated 18 gun laws. Do you think 2 more gun laws would have helped? How about 10 more? Maybe 20 more? They don't care. Criminals don't care about the laws you pass. The purpose of those laws is only to get the honest citizens to become criminals by breaking those laws. Liberal media jumped on gun control. You know, maybe the real issue is, should we have public schools? Should we teach the kids evolution? That's what caused that gun control thing, or caused the Columbine shooting. Those 2 kids were strong believers in evolution. They did the shooting on Adolf Hitler's birthday. We'll get into more on Hitler in a little bit. They shot Isaiah Shoals just because he was black. They shot Cassie just because she believed in God. Eric's T-shirt said, natural selection. They spoke German to each other in the hallway. Nothing wrong with German, ich spreche ein klein bisschen Deutsch. But this was a evolution. Evolution was the foundation philosophy behind what happened at Columbine High School. I'm convinced of that. See, blaming guns for Columbine is like blaming spoons for Rosie O'Donnell being fat. It is not the spoon's fault. Okay? And it's not the gun's fault that those kids got shot. It's the person's fault, okay? I love that. Somebody sent me that picture of the back of a van. Some guy driving around with that on there. That's so good. I thought, why didn't I think of that? You know? Maybe the real issue is, should certain criminals be publicly executed? If executions were swift and public. In the Bible, it's a pretty neat system. The offended person gets to be involved. You throw the first stone. I mean, if somebody murdered your wife or husband or kids, there's a normal, natural anger that gets inside of people. That's normal. I'm angry. Look what they did to me. And the proper godly response, the release of that, God knows, He made people. He knows what we're built like. He did the whole thing, okay? It gives a relief, a release of this tension when you can see that person who did that harm to your family executed. Should you choose to be involved in it? I want to flip the switch. Okay. I want to throw the first stone. This gets the anger out. Maybe you saw the movie Forrest Gump, you know, where the lady at the end of the movie, she's throwing rocks at that house, you know, that her dad molested her in. And old Forrest said, sometimes there just aren't enough rocks, you know. There's just something in people that they just want to get closure. And this causes closure. How many people right now tonight, they were harmed, or someone in their family was harmed, the person who harmed them is sitting in jail. That person tonight is a nervous wreck, thinking that person in jail might escape. Right? How many women have been raped? The guy who raped them is in prison, scheduled for release today. I sat yesterday and had dinner with 3 Arkansas representatives, and they were talking about, you know, this. They're talking about, one of the guys introduced a law to make rape a capital offense where you get executed. Execute people for rape. And one of the other congressmen says, well, that didn't take away their life. He said, yeah, it did. That did take away their life. Think about it. Yes, it does. Okay, maybe we should think about, should all law-abiding citizens be required to carry guns to protect themselves? Suppose every teacher in Columbine High School was required to be armed, and the kids all knew it. Do you think they would have gone down the hall shooting everybody? No. One of the auto parts places, it wasn't AutoZone, but DAPS or one of those, I forget, national chains, decided that they're going to have signs put on all their doors, no guns allowed. No guns allowed on these premises. What does that sign say to a criminal? That says, rob me. Doesn't it? Duh. You don't need to be a genius to figure it out. And so the National Rifle Association, NRA, or else the Gun Owners of America, which is even a more conservative, you know, properly thought out organization than National NRA, Gun Owners of America, GOA. I'm not a member of either group. I love what they do. I'm just not a member of any groups except my church. That's all I got time for. But they wrote to them and said, we're going to tell all of our people not to buy at your store. Gun owners are people, you know, they aren't the ones committing the crimes. They're the ones wanting to defend themselves. They just want to eat the grass. They just have the horns just in case, you know. That's all. Hitler is reported to have said, now I've taken some criticism over this quote because some people say, I searched Hitler's writings and couldn't find this. I cannot prove that he said this, okay? I've tried desperately to find the evidence of this. I've had some people tell me, oh, yes, it's absolutely true. Hitler said that. Other people said, well, it hasn't been proven yet. Whether the quote is legitimate or not, I don't know. The philosophy certainly is. Okay? It is reported that Hitler said in 1935, this year will go down in history. For the first time, a civilized nation had full gun registration. Our streets will be safer. Our police more efficient. Boy, were they. And the world will follow our lead into the future. 1935. Janet Reno said, gun registration is not enough. She said, waiting periods are only a step. Registration is only a step. The prohibition of private firearms is the goal. Howard Metzenbaum, former senator from Ohio, said, what good does it do to ban some guns? All guns should be banned. Wait till Howard gets robbed a few times. He'll change his tune, right? Okay. Sarah Brady, you've heard of the Brady Bill? Sarah Brady said, "Our task of creating a totally socialist America can only succeed when those who would resist have been totally disarmed." You have to disarm your enemy. What's the first thing you do in war? You conquer somebody, you beat them, everybody surrenders. Take away their guns. Desert Storm. Thousands of Iraqis surrendered. Did they let them keep their weapons? No. You got a couple of Marines with machine guns can guard a couple of thousand Iraqis that are unarmed. Right? Bill Clinton, former President of the United States of America, people say, "Oh, why did you misspell it on there?" Oh, no, it's not misspelled. He's a communist through and through. Okay, Clinton's philosophy is certainly communistic. Hillary's worse. Clinton said, "And we should. Then every community in the country could start doing major weapons sweeps and then destroying the weapons, not selling them." The idea is to destroy the weapons. Australia had gun control. In the first 12 months after Australian gun owners surrendered their guns, this was a couple years ago, they surrendered 640,000 personal firearms. They were destroyed. Cost the government $500 million to destroy the guns in Australia. Homicides nationwide went up 3.2% after gun control. Assaults are up 8%. Armed robberies are up 44%. Well, I thought they took away the guns. How can you have armed robberies? Well, duh. You think the criminals are going to surrender their guns? Are you dumb in any other area? In the state of Victoria, homicides with firearms went up 300%. Figures over the previous 25 years show a steady decrease in armed robbery with firearms. There's been a dramatic increase in break-ins and assaults of the elderly since they banned the guns. What's the average criminal thinking? Let's see, nobody has guns anymore. Everybody's an easy target, right? In 1911, Turkey established gun control. For the next 6 years, 1.5 million Armenians, unable to defend themselves, were rounded up and exterminated, killed. 1929, Soviet Union established gun control. Over the next 30 years, 20 million dissidents, unable to defend themselves, were rounded up and exterminated. 20 million people. Do you know how many that is? Jews are prohibited from carrying firearms and ammunition according to a Nazi gun control decree in 1938. Germany established gun control in 1938. They had gun registration first. Now gun control. They decide who gets them. 1939 to 1945, 13 million Jews and others were unable to defend themselves and were rounded up and exterminated. Brian works in our ministry. He can give you lots of details on what happened here, but when the Warsaw Ghetto decided, they're killing us, let's go fight them. They only had like 5 guns. Most of the Jews had never touched a gun, had no idea how to use one. Only a few people even knew how to use them. They put up a horrendous fight against the Nazis, I mean, in an extremely lousy situation. They're going to get killed anyway. Go down fighting. Okay? China established gun control in 1935, and for the next few years, 20 million political dissidents, unable to defend themselves, were rounded up and exterminated. Guatemala established gun control in 1964. Over the next 16 years, 100,000 Mayan Indians, unable to defend themselves, were rounded up and exterminated. Uganda established gun control in 1970. For the next 8 years, 300,000 Christians, unable to defend themselves, were rounded up and exterminated. Cambodia established gun control in 1956. 1975 to 77, 1 million educated people, unable to defend themselves, were rounded up and exterminated. Defenseless people rounded up and exterminated in the 20th century because of gun control, 56 million. Next time someone talks in favor of gun control, ask them, who do you want to round up and exterminate? With guns, we are citizens. Without guns, we are subjects. Our founding fathers were sharp. They said, look, you have to allow people to defend themselves. There are many people in our government who have a communist philosophy, whether they know it or not. They might not even know it. But they do have a communist philosophy which leads right to this idea, you know, we really ought to take away everybody's guns. Only the UN should have guns because we can trust them. Oh, yeah, right. Okay. The plan is very simple. The communists have used this for years. You create a crisis, and then you bring in your solution. Hitler blew up the government building, the Reichstag. He blew it up himself, or had his people blow it up. And then he said, wow, look at this, terrorists, that means we need more gun control. Everything that happened at Waco and at Oklahoma City was all part of the same thing. It was purposely done to cause people to panic and give up their rights and establish more gun control. Long stories can be told about that, okay? Communist definition of peace is simply the absence of resistance. When everybody quits fighting, then we have peace. Surrender your guns and we'll be fine. Karl Marx, the father of communism, wanted to dedicate his book to Charles Darwin. He sent a copy of his book, Das Kapital, to Charles Darwin, and on the front page he wrote, dedicated to Charles Darwin from a sincere admirer, Karl Marx, 1873. Karl Marx knew full well communism couldn't survive without evolution as a philosophical base. I read somewhere, I don't remember, I think it's in The Long War Against God, Karl Marx, when he read Darwin's book, he wrote a letter to Engels, who supplied all of his money, because Marx was a loser, never worked a day in his life. He said, Engels, I just read this book by Darwin. This is perfect to justify our theories of communism. Well, all through his speeches, Karl Marx referred to evolution. Notice this. Marx often bowled over opposition with mountain-moving declarations of superconfidence. Historical evolution is on your side, he shouted to followers. Capitalism, brought into being by the laws of historical evolution, will be destroyed by those same laws. All you got to do is read through Karl Marx's stuff and you'll see him referring to evolution over and over again. This was the philosophy. Comrade Stalin, communist, entered school. He went to a Christian school as a child. While still a pupil at the ecclesiastical school, Comrade Stalin developed a critical mind and revolutionary sentiments. He began to read Darwin and became an atheist. Now, Joseph Stalin read that book. That changed his life forever. Here he was going to a Christian school, became a communist, became a revolutionary, became an evolutionist. Missionaries have said, when they work in a country like China, when the communists came in and took over China, missionaries were all over China. They reported the first thing the communists came into the villages and did was start teaching the kids evolution. They didn't teach them communism, taught them evolution first. You got to have evolution first, and then you can teach them about communism. First you got to take away God, then put man in his place. Joseph Stalin killed between 60 and 100 million of his own people. You ought to read any of the books by Alexander Solzhenitsyn. I read the book Gulag Archipelago, Gulag. Gulag Archipelago. It's like 900 and some pages. Somebody said, Brother Hovind, I want you to read this book. It's great. I thought, yeah, right. I read 2 books a week as it is, and I'm swamped. I don't have any more time. I said, okay, I'll just read a few pages. I couldn't put it down. 900 pages. This guy lived in the concentration camps. He was there for 15 years. He now, I think, is still alive, isn't he, in Vermont? He's getting pretty old. Alexander Solzhenitsyn has written extensively about communism, life under Joseph Stalin. Joseph Stalin's daughter became a Christian. Interesting. When the communists attacked Poland during World War II, see, Germany and Russia had an agreement that they wouldn't fight. Hitler had no plans of keeping that agreement because he thought the Slavic people were half Aryan, half ape. We'll show you in a minute about that. But when they attacked Poland, the Polish army put up an incredible, ferocious resistance. But they were just outnumbered and outgunned. It was just absolutely no chance of winning. But like Churchill said, sometimes it's better to fight when there's no chance of winning than to be slaves. It's better to see it coming a few years ahead of time, you know. But, hey, if it's too late, go down with the fight, okay? Suppose every Jew that was being captured to take off to the concentration camps had put up a fight and killed one Nazi or tried to kill one Nazi. Just suppose, you know. Maybe the outcome would have been a little different. They ended up slaughtering these Polish people, and they captured thousands and thousands of prisoners. They had 14,700 prisoners at one place, the officers in the Polish army. They said to Stalin, what should we do with them? We got all these 14,700 Polish officers. He said, execute them. They're Poles. They're inferior species. The Russians finally admitted this in 1993, but they did it clear back in 1940, 42 or 41, 42. They took all these prisoners, Polish officers, put hoods over their heads, tied their hands behind their back, and then jerked them up as hard as they could and wrapped the rope around the hood. So the harder you pull down, the more you choke yourself. Took them out to the woods, Katyn Forest, and shot them in the back of the head. 14,700 officers. You say, oh, that's terrible. What about the Geneva Convention? The Geneva Convention says you can't do that. You've got to treat your prisoners a certain way. Well, duh. If you're a communist, there's no God. What motivation would you have to keep your word on a convention? If a lion makes a treaty with a lamb, should the lamb get excited? Hey, Mr. Lion, you promised you wouldn't hurt me. I got this piece of paper right here. Well, wait till the lion gets hungry and see how much that paper does. Okay? And here we got these idiots in our government making treaties with the communists, you know, SALT treaties and, you know, strategic arms limitation talks and stuff like that. Absolutely dumb. People have said, well, the communists, you know, they're hurting over there. The economy's bad. You know, we got to support their economy. Okay, well, let's buy their tanks and their battleships at 10 cents on the dollar. You got paid $40 million for that? We'll give you $4 million. Well, for goodness, it's worth $40 million. Well, that's okay. When you get hungry, come see us. You can't eat that tank, you know. Pol Pot, dictator in Cambodia, executed 1/3 of his entire population. The movie Killing Fields is about this. It's a bad movie, but it truly depicts what happened. People were killed just because they wore glasses. Because he figured, oh, you wear glasses? You must know how to read. You're educated. That's what communism did to Cambodia. The guy that works at Camera America, a year ago, and I was in there one time. He may not still work there. I said, hey, he just had a slight accent. I said, where are you from? He said, Cambodia. I said, really? How'd you get to America? He said, I barely escaped. He said, everybody in my family was killed. Lost my mother, my father, my brothers, my sisters, my aunts, my uncles, my grandparents. I'm the only survivor. Here in Pensacola, working at Camera America. In 1975 to 1979, the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia, Pol Pot was the leader, they began executing people. Anybody that opposed him in any way. By the way, Pol Pot is still on the loose, last I heard. Still setting landmines and bombs all over the area, blowing up kids as they walk through the woods. Killed 1/3 of the entire population. It's in the Guinness Book of World Records under genocide. Mass genocide. The communists took over China in 1949 with American help, by the way. The capitalists helped the communists take over China. Long story behind that. They began executing Christians because Christians don't fit in well with New World Order type governments. They killed 15,000 a month. 60 million Chinese were killed by their own government. And if there's a takeover in America, you'll see the same type of slaughter here of American citizens by the American government. And there's all sorts of people who have been doing research on this about the concentration camps that are already being built. And the plans already being laid at the Amtrak station in Indianapolis, where they remodeled that to be a transportation hub to bring the people in when they don't go along with the system. We'll cover more on that next week. We'll take up more about communism and how it ties in with Nazism and Adolf Hitler and his book, Mein Kampf. If you want to read something interesting, you ought to read Hitler's book, what he wrote about his philosophy of life. We'll see how that affected things starting next week. Communism, evolution, Nazism, it all ties together, folks. It's all rejecting God. See you next week.